just posted it.
All right. And I think we are live. Hello, everybody. And I will ask my guests who are able to please switch on their videos as we welcome you. Those who are having internet problems, connection problems, challenges, will switch off their video later. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Msingi Talks. Msingi Talks is a Facebook live that happens every third Thursday of the month, where we talk all things justice, all things faith, all things activism, all things advocacy, and how those 3 or 4 worlds can come together. I'm very honored to have auspicious guests, Maureen Kasuku from Kenyans for Palestine, and there's Kolade Fadahunsi, Kairos, Nigeria. We are expecting Emma Nyerere, but she is not able to come at this very moment because she's attending the memorial of the late President John Pombe Magufuli. So when she comes, we will just continue with the conversation, and she'll share her bit. So this is a conversation, but before we enter into conversation, I will ask my guests to please introduce themselves and why they're here. I will start with you, Maureen.
Okay. Thank you for that great introduction, Caroline. Hi, Kolade, and hi to everyone who's tuning in. Thank you for joining this live stream. So my name is Maureen Kasuku, pronouns she, her, and I am a socialist feminist based in Nairobi and a member of Kenyans for Palestine. And I took up this invitation from Caroline, invited me to talk about Israel Anti-Apartheid Week, and also to talk about the BDS movement in Kenya and in Africa in general. So I'm looking forward to this discussion, and I hope those tuning in and watching the live stream can learn something and join this very noble cause in supporting Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karibu. Kolade?
Thank you very much, Carol. It is a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank you for this opportunity. I'm Kolade Fadamsi. I am the Executive Director of Kairos, Nigeria, and also Director of the Institute of Church and Society of the Christian Council of Nigeria. I am here to contribute to this discussion from the perspective of what we do in Nigeria as Kairos, Nigeria, looking at how we theologically respond to the questions of Israel-Palestine, and how we balance the theology, more importantly, how we address the growing rate of Zionism in Nigeria, and also the injustice that has brought to the issue of Palestine, Israel, and also to see what can be done in that climb to redefine the way we present God and the way we act as God when it comes to the question of justice and oppression. There are issues around that also. So thank you very much for this platform.
Karibu sana. This conversation is hosted by Msingi Trust. Msingi Trust, as I said, is an organization that makes the connections between faith, justice, advocacy, and activism. And we do it through 3 ways. We create content, we host conversations, and we make connections. But I will not be doing the introduction. I'll play a video that will introduce Msingi to us, and then we can get on with the conversation.
What does social justice, activism, advocacy, and the Christian faith have in common? Is pursuing justice at all levels a spiritual discipline? How do we influence church leaders and Christians to advocate for justice and fight injustice? How can churches become the first line of defense for the socially unprotected? Msingi is a movement of people spurred by their Christian faith to answer these questions about social justice, advocacy, and activism. Msingi believes the church can be empowered to redemptively advocate for justice for the most oppressed, for those relegated to the fringes of society, for the disempowered, and those without access to power. In his inaugural sermon, Jesus spoke about those on the margins of society, about their freedom and their liberation. Pursuing justice is at the core of being a Jesus follower. Justice and righteousness is the foundation of God's throne. Msingi's name, call, heart, and bold mission draws from this, holding true to the tenets of God's kingdom. Our faith propels us to seek justice and spend ourselves on behalf of the poor. Justice is their shield and defender. At Msingi, we are about connecting the struggles that we all face. We are creating safe spaces to converse about social justice, curating content that enhances justice conversations, and in this way, uniting the stand for social justice and for advocacy. Engage the content, join in the conversations, connect to the movement. This is Msingi. What does social justice
Thank you very much. I need to stop sharing. There, stop share. And I will ask Maureen to please give us a brief history on the Israeli-Palestine struggle occupation. You are on mute. You're still on mute, Maureen.
Maybe you send a message to our chat to unmute our speaker.
She's listening. I think she's trying to unmute herself. I don't know what's the challenge. We can't hear you still. Kolade, would you take this then? As she tries?
That is fine.
Yes. What's the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Yeah, to us, the history of Israeli-Palestine, of course, it's taken from the point of view of brothers, of people that God created, and because of political domination and manipulation, issue of land, issue of shelter, issue of economy, empowerment, power politics came to play, and it became a master-slave relationship. It was before 1948 when the State of Israel actually became a state. The entire space, that region belongs to people together: the Palestinians, Arab Palestinians, Jewish Palestinians, the Jews themselves, all around live together. And after Holocaust, people began to come back to this and find the justification for return and having issues over land led to a struggle for continuous disputes. And from that time on, there are the power to wanting to forcefully eject and also forcefully dominate and forcefully take over resources from the other. So two brothers from Israel an enemy, and that is where we see the powerful become the oppressor, and the weaker one becomes the oppressed. So from this time on, it has been a cat and dog relationship. It has been from one level of intimidation, even to apartheid, to economic apartheid, justice, water justice, and struggles on daily basis, and imprisonment. Food war has happened, and up even until this moment, there's no stable government in Palestine. For terrorism, and people across the divide are closely related, can no longer see the sharp borders that are blocked and the walls that partition, and people cannot move from one end to the other. This is injustice. This is a great challenge. It's a problem for one, even if you come from the perspective of being religious, from one Abrahamic faith, you begin to see that God has been put in the position of a God that supports one side against the other. So this is the history, this is the story. The story and the history is all about man and being God and taking the other over the other. Man enslaving the other, man suppressing, manipulating, oppressing, and also killing one another for space, for land, for resources, for water, and for power. And also it's sad also to now see how this power of the world is taking sides in one direction and also leaving the other, making some people to be less human, degrading and suppressing the dignity of the other. So it is for us as people, as individuals who seek justice, who like a justice, who wants justice, to make justice to be all-encompassing, to be what we be for every humankind, and the God has created the surface of earth. So to me, this is the history of Palestine, this is the history of the struggle, and this is the need. This is what has brought about the need for the liberation of the oppressed, to be free from the champion of the oppression, and to make those who is that oppression and to see the light, and also break down the barriers and the wall that separate people and God.
Kolade, we heard you, but at 60%. I don't know if you can, if you'd be able to, if you're able to bring the mic closer to you or the speaker to your earphones. The next question. But Maureen, would you please give us a brief history as well?
Hi, can you hear me? I'm having some really weird tech problems today with my video, and can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you audibly.
All right, thank you. So Brother Kolade gave a brief history of the Palestinian Israeli conflict, and I say conflict very lightly because this is complete humanitarian crisis. This is apartheid in action. And, you know, just to double down on what Brother Kolade has said, and just to add a few things, is that since 1948, when this all-Jewish state was established in what we know as Palestine, the Nakba is an Arabic word for catastrophe, and this is when 700,000 Palestinians were uprooted from their homes by this Israeli government to establish what we now know as the Israeli state. And since then, 74 years later, we still have, the crisis is still ongoing. The Israeli government has managed to annex a lot of land from the Palestinians, and the Palestinians are living under apartheid. And we know they do not have self-determination. Every other working day, we learn of stories, we see it in the news of how the Palestinians are losing their homes to Israeli forces. They are getting their lands taken away from them. they are experiencing, arbitrary arrests and imprisonment. And the Israeli government is, people have talked about a two-state solution. They have talked about having talks to end this disaster, this catastrophe that is happening in occupied Palestine. But the Israeli government does not want to cede, does not want to have any kind of peace talk. So 74 years later, since the establishment of the Israeli state in 1948, the atrocities are still going on. So we have Palestinians not having self-determination, having their land taken away from them, getting imprisoned, denied the chance to visit holy sites on their own land. And just, this humanitarian crisis has penetrated the whole world. We now know what is going on in Israel. And today we are here on Singi Talks with Caroline and everyone, tuning in to this live to see what us as Africans can do to stand with the people of Palestine.
Thank you, Maureen. I've realized that we are having throwing around some words which we have not defined yet. Kolade, could you please define for us what Zionism is and also what Christian Zionism is?
Thank you very much, Carol. To us, Zionism is just a concept that says that a group of people are super powerful and are super the group of
We have lost you, Kolade.
These are untouched to God, and these are inheritance of doing what is. These are a Christian theology to say God actually said this, and if it is what God has said, then there's nobody that can question or change that position. So it is supporting injustice. It is developing the attributes of untouchable, using God, justification by the fact that God has said this. This is what has been promised to our forefathers. This place has been us, and so we have to take to not justify oppression. These are the challenge.
We seem to be losing you, Kolade.
And what kind of questions that we play out this scenario and still present God as the Father or as the Creator of all? And if God actually says that this land belongs to a particular group of people and the others go, then where would the others go? And who created this one? So now the growth rate of Christian Zionism is talking about the fact that because of powerful machinations and finances that is in the hand of some group of people who are also called Christian, they have decided to blindly support this injustice and create this apartheid, this segregation, and using theology, the word of God, and justifying it in position of what is written in one aspect and one part of the word of God, the Old Testament, and not considering what the New Testament also have to say to brotherliness, to godliness, to stay together. So the issue of who is your brother? When I was homeless, you provided me shelter. When I was hungry, you gave me food. And when I was sick, you looked after me. These are the positions that we have in the New Testament according to Jesus Christ, the gospel as written. By Apostle of Jesus Christ, we follow as Christians. So if you take the Old Testament, then you blend and say, God promised this land. So that people should not go there. And what God has promised to our forefathers, who gave back to the other side and who created together. So this is the issue of Zionism, super race, super people created by God, by one super God that takes sides of the oppressor and doesn't want to care about the oppressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, Kolade. Maureen, could you help us define apartheid and Palestinian solidarity?
Yeah, so I hope tech is kind to us. Thank you, Brother Kolade, for that definition of what Zionism is. And Israeli apartheid is basically how Israeli is denying the people of Palestine self-determination. They control their movement, they control their politics, they are taking over their housing rights, they are preventing them from building solidarity with other peoples across the world. And Palestinian solidarity is us, the internationalist movement, who care about what is happening in Israel, in occupied Palestine, what the Israeli government is doing to the rightful owners of the land. So this internationalist movement, the Palestinian Solidarity Movement, aims to bring awareness to the conflict, to what is happening in occupied Palestine. We aim to build solidarity with the grassroots movement, supporting the cause of Palestine. Kenyans for Palestine, for example, we work on political education to let people in the grassroots know what is happening in Palestine. And there are other similar movements to Kenyans for Palestine across the world that also work on the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, where we educate people on products created by the Israeli government, so that the consumer can be aware of what they're purchasing and how giving their money to the Israeli government hurts people in Palestine. So the Palestinian Solidarity Movement takes many forms. Kenyans for Palestine is actually working on the BDS movement, which we'll talk about in detail later in this discussion. So if you are watching this live stream from anywhere in the world, and especially and particularly here in Kenya, I'd like to urge you to join the Palestinian Solidarity Movement to stand with the people of occupied Palestine against Israeli apartheid. Like I said, Israeli apartheid is the Israeli government refusing to give the people of Palestine the right to self-determination. So they don't allow them, to build grounds of unity with other peoples of the world. They don't want them to have self-determination through their own government, to be able to defend themselves and their land. So that is what is happening in occupied Palestine. Of course, it's similar to what was happening right here at home on the continent with South Africa and the Rhodesian government. So yeah, basically that is what Israeli apartheid is, and I've defined what solidarity and unity with the Palestinian means. And yeah, so later on we'll discuss what BDS looks like, what we can do with the BDS movement. And it's the beginning of is anti-Israeli Apartheid Week that begins on 21st of March till the 4th of April. We'll have more discussion on that. So yeah, that is what Israeli apartheid is, and that is what, and I've given the definition of Palestinian unity. So yeah, I'd like to urge everyone to join in on the movement.
Thank you. Thank you, Maureen. So there's a lot of questions as to why we are having this conversation. This is something that's not happening in the continent. I want to lift up a few quotes from Pan-African leaders Winnie Madikizela Mandela said, apartheid Israel can be defeated, just as apartheid in South Africa was defeated. Amilcar Cabral said, we are with the refugees, the martyrized refugees of Palestine, who have been tricked and driven from their own homeland by the maneuvers of imperialism. Mwalimu Julius Nyerere said, the Palestinian plight is more terrible and unjust. They have been deprived of their own country. They are a nation without a land of their own. They therefore deserve the support of Tanzania and the entire world. The world must hear their voice and give them understanding and support. Later on, Emma Nyerere will join us, and she could share more about why Pan-African solidarity is important. But I also want to listen to, for us to hear another quote from Mwalimu Nyerere, and said, we have never hesitated in our support of for the right of the people of Palestine to have their own land. Why is African solidarity with Palestine important, Kolade?
Yeah, thank you very much, Carol. African solidarity with Palestine is important because Africa, we have had our own share of colonialism. Virtually, for a few states like Liberia and Ethiopia, were not colonized. And when you pass through the process of colonization, when you don't have self-determination to your land, you don't have access to your resources, you don't have access to your growth, you don't have access to your economic empowerment and development, then you can understand how terrible that is for people. So anywhere on the surface of this earth where we find these traces of wickedness against human, then it is where Africa, who has passed through these stages of colonization in different forms, should respond and also join such people to fight and to achieve their self-determination and liberation from the powers that hold them down and breaking them free from the chains and the shackles that tie them to the barest ground, and that is making them not to even advance. Statelessness is a very big issue. When you cannot be identified to a particular place, when you cannot be proud of your homeland, when you cannot be proud of your state and say, this is home, this is our government, this is our state, then it looks as if you are not a citizen. So therefore, during the period of colonialism, you can see the partitioning of Africa. You can see our brothers are turning against each other. You can see the language we speak now in Africa. And for example, in Nigeria is a country surrounded by French-speaking West African countries. We don't understand ourselves. We don't know what we do at times. We take decisions that affect our space. So the same thing. If Israel continues to oppress Palestine, we continue to dominate, to create apartheid segregation in that place. It is our duty as Africans to rise collectively and say enough, because injustice to one is an injustice to all. And also to say, Africa is also a religious space. This is where we are religious. We know God, and if we know God, we should act as ambassadors, creation of God, to stamp out injustice and wickedness anywhere in the world. So it is also our duty. If we say, yes, we are religious, we know God, we serve God, then when we see our brothers who are in pain, it should also be our pain. When they are in problem, it should also be our problem. So politically, religiously, socially, culturally, and every other means, economically, we are tied to Palestine. We are also, we've used this before, and because we know it is not something that is good and palatable, we should be on the side of justice. And that is why it is important for South Africa to stand with the people of Palestine and give justice to their destiny. Thank you.
Thank you, Kolade. Maureen, why is it important for African solidarity of Palestine?
Yes, Thank you, Brother Kolade, for emphasizing the importance of Africans uniting with the cause of Palestine. So it is very vital for Africans to unite with the people of occupied Palestine, because here's a rather strange anecdote of Israel and Kenyan history. So in, I think 1930, the leader of the Zionist movement had proposed that Kenya be the Jewish settlement of become a Jewish settlement. That was almost 90 years ago. 18 years before, they occupied Palestine. So what is happening in Palestine could have easily happened in Kenya. We would have been under Zionist occupation. It could have been us asking the world, to unite with Africans, to unite with Kenyans against Zionist occupation of our land. So, like I'm saying, this could have easily happened to us, but it didn't. And instead, it happened to the Palestinians. So Africa uniting with Palestinians is vital because Israel, they sell spyware to various African governments, and they train the police and the military to fight the working class people of Africa. I know you all heard of the Pegasus scandal. And why on earth would you support a Zionist regime that is hell-bent on hurting Africans? And
Please, Green,
yes.
please tell us about the Pegasus scandal. We did not hear of it.
So the Pegasus scandal was exposed by various media houses, and there's this person called Snowden. He is an American citizen currently living in Russia, I believe, seeking asylum in Russia. He exposed the espionage secrets of the American government back in 2017, I believe. And he also brought to the forefront, and he highlighted what was happening with Pegasus, espionage company that is run by the Israeli government and supported by Zionists. So this Pegasus is selling espionage tools and spyware to some African governments. I am not going to mention any names, but these African governments use these tools to spy on citizens, and this prevents subversive activities by Africans seeking to hold their governments accountable, and also to do revolutionary acts that are going to liberate the people. So this is what the Israeli government is doing to Africans. They are supporting espionage. They are supporting this government spying on their people. They are training police. They are training the military. And there's a lot to be said about the role of police and the military in our society. But I mean, just look around. Look at what the police have done to working class Kenya, to the proletarians of Kenya. Look at what the army is doing in Somalia and to Kenyans in northern Kenya. So if anything, even if you don't want to stand with the people of Palestine, you just should be aware of what the Israeli government is doing to you as an ordinary African. They are selling some very dangerous espionage tools to they're selling some very dangerous espionage tools to your government. And it's only right that we stand with the people of Palestine, because we have experienced what it feels like, what it means to live under colonialism of the British, of the French. We know why it was important for us to have self-determination. And some people might argue that we only received nominal independence and that we are still under neo-colonialism, and I don't dispute that. But that the fact that, you know, we are able to have a semblance of independence, you should want the same for the people of Palestine. So it is very important for Africans to stand in solidarity with the people of Palestine in their resistance against Israeli colonialism. And it's also very important that Africans get behind this cause for your own sake. Like, why would you just sit around and knowing what the Israeli government is doing to you as Africans through Pegasus? Yeah.
Maureen, thank you for taking us to school, Asante. I think every time we hear the word or the terms Zion, you know, Zion is a biblical term, and a Jewish term or a place. We sound as if we are being we are being anti-Semitic. But before we come to the anti-Semitism of this conversation, there are two views of what is going on in Israel-Palestine. Advocates of Zionism view it as a national liberation movement for the repatriation of a persecuted people residing as minorities in a variety of lands to their ancestral homelands. Anti-Zionists view it as a colonialist, racist, or exceptionalist ideology or movements. There's Christian Zionists and Christian Zionism see it as the Holy Land, the Promised Land, the fulfillment of revelations. How do you see it? What is truth? What is false? How do you see it, Kolade? Kolade, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yes. How did you hear my question?
No.
Oh, okay. So I can repeat it. Christian, it's about Zionism and how it's viewed. Advocates of Zionism view it as a national liberation movement for the repatriation of a persecuted people residing as minorities in a variety of lands to their ancestral homeland. Anti-Zionists view it as a colonialist, racist, or exceptionalist ideology or movement. Christians see it, some Christians see it as a fulfillment of prophecy, and others see that is a holy land being taken back by the people who should own it. How do you see it? You can unmute.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. Like I will always say, this is a sign of human.
We can't hear you, Kolade. You're disconnecting. Hello? Maureen, maybe you can go as we wait for him.
Right. So we are talking about how people have made this into a religious issue, and especially Africans on the continent. Many of them are hesitant to join the Palestinian solidarity movement, because they've, for years, they've swallowed the Zionist Kool-Aid and believed that, okay, Israel should exist as a state because they are the chosen people of God and stuff like that. But a lot of people don't know that what we now know as Israel, or occupied Palestine, has Palestinian Christians, and these Palestinian Christians do not have self-determination because of the Zionist government, the Israeli Zionist government. They are forbidden from visiting the holy sites. So these Palestinian Christians do not have access to the holy sites on their own land. They cannot visit Bethlehem for pilgrimage. They cannot, do their prayers at certain sites in Israel, or more politically correct, occupied Palestine. So people should be aware that Palestinian Christians exist, and they do not have self-determination to practice their faith because of the Zionist government, the Israeli government. And also, what the Israeli government is doing to people in occupied Palestine, aka Israel, what they are doing goes against the teachings of Christ. You cannot, treat your neighbor like that. You cannot treat your brother like that. This goes against, Christian teachings, to bomb schools, to bomb hospitals, to deny people self-determination, to cut down their crops, to displace them from their homes. I'm sure Jesus doesn't support what the Israeli government is doing to people in Palestine, because what they are doing is cruel. What they are doing goes against a basic humanity. I mean, people across all faiths, all cultures would agree that what the Israeli government is doing to people in Palestine is wrong and just goes against the basic principles of humanity. So if you could just please put yourself in the shoes of Christian Palestine, of the Christians living in Palestine who do not have access to the Holy Land and who are being treated in an inhumane way by the Zionist government. This goes against the basic principles of Christianity and across all faiths. So it
Maureen,
would be.
I want to
Yes.
ask you, if Jesus was born right now,
Yes.
where would he have been born? Where would Jesus have been born?
I am not quite good at a historical analysis of Jesus, but what is now referred to as Israel, aka occupied Palestine, in Bethlehem, that is where Jesus would have been born, right? And perhaps Jesus would have been considered a troublemaker by the Israeli government. So for Christians out there, it's very important to know that perhaps if Jesus, who I consider as a revolutionary, if he existed today, the Israeli government would have wanted, to take care of him. And I use the word take care because I don't want to, advance violent rhetoric during Msingi talk. So please, this is urging Christians and people of good faith across the world, no matter which religion you ascribe to, don't believe the propaganda that this is a Muslim versus Jew thing. This is a humanity versus Israeli Zionism thing, because Christian Palestinians also seek self-determination, also want to practice their faith, but they are prevented of doing this because of the Israeli Zionist government. So please stop advancing the myth that just let the people chosen by God do whatever they want to do. I'm sure it is not the will of God to see other people suffer. It is not the will of God to see people's land taken away from them. It is not the will of God to see a certain kind of people advance racism against the Palestinians. So I do not purport to speak for God. I do not purport to speak for Christians, but I just like you to look into your humanity and see what is happening to the people of Palestine.
Asante, Maureen. Kolade, I hope your internet is better. I see my dear friend Curtis really wants to hear from you, but we are having trouble, a bit of trouble with your connection and with your sound. But our last question was the question that we were answering. Let me just get to it. Is about the Zionism Christian views. How do you see Zionism? Kolade?
Thank you. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Are you?
I can hear you.
Oh.
We can hear you, Kolade. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can't hear you if you're talking, Kolade. Hello? All right, we have lost Kolade. Today, the internet is really playing games, but as we're waiting for him, we'll give him some time to talk about this question because it's very important. And especially the work that he does with Kairos Nigeria, the work he does, and he'll introduce the Kairos Nigeria movement to us. Maureen, we can go to the next question and talk about the BDS movement. You could introduce Kenyan for Palestine, talk about the BDS movement, and maybe give a brief history on the Israeli Apartheid week.
Okay. So earlier in the discussion, I had mentioned something about the BDS movement, which is the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. So the BDS movement is okay. Just a minute. Hello. Hello.
Hi, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The BDS movement is movement started by people of goodwill and Palestinians, and it's a movement that calls for a boycott of Israeli and affiliated companies that are complicit in violating the rights of the Palestinian people. So the BDS movement calls upon people of goodwill across the world to boycott Israeli products because the money that the Zionist government gets from selling various products goes towards solidifying and fortifying their activities in occupied Palestine. This money is then goes to the IDF. This money then goes to support Zionist movements, not just in Israel, but across the world. So the BDS movement calls upon people to recognize, various Israeli-made products and boycott them so that they can cut off, the gravy train. They can cut off finances that support the Israeli Zionist movement. So Kenyans for Palestine is grassroots movement of internationalists, of Kenyans of goodwill who want to support the Palestinian cause, who want to stand in solidarity with the people of Palestine. And one of our projects is the BDS movement. We are educating Kenyans on various Israeli products that they can boycott, and giving them products that they can diversify to, and letting them know how divesting from Israeli products can go a long way in sanctioning the Zionist government. So one of our first projects with the BDS movement here in Kenya, led by Kenyans for Palestine, was to boycott products by Baraka Israel, their wine, their olive oil that is extracted from olive trees in occupied Palestine, where the people of the land are not even allowed to plant these trees, to harvest the olives from these trees, and to benefit from trees on their own land. But then Israel becomes one of the biggest exporters of olive oil in the world, and some of that olive oil is consumed right here in Kenya under the banner of Baraka Israel. So and it's pretty popular. The olive oil is pretty popular. So next time you're at the supermarket, please watch out for Baraka Israel products, the olive oil, the wine, and just a whole range of kitchen and household items. And also just be aware of what the Israeli embassy in Nairobi is doing in various institutions. So for example, they have the Israeli Film Week that lures aspiring actors and producers in Kenya. So please avoid the Israel Film Week. I know it's very enticing, and they promise aspiring actors and aspiring producers all these things. But you participating in the Israeli Film Week is, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but it is you being complicit in supporting the Zionist government against the people of Palestine. And there's just so much you can boycott. I know it's probably a long shot to ask people to boycott HP. Some of these computers that you use perhaps at your workplace, it's beyond your control. But hey, next time you're at the supermarket, just be very intentional about looking at a product and finding out if it's from Israel. Or you can visit the BDS movement website. They have a whole section of products that you can choose to boycott. I know it's not always easy, but there's so much that you can divest from. You don't necessarily have to wear Puma shoes, for example. Why not wear Adidas?
Maureen,
Yes.
I want to cut you short because you'll continue with the BDS conversation, but I have feedback that a lot of our listeners do not understand BDS and that it is an acronym, and there's a request that we try and avoid acronyms as much as we can. So what does BDS stand for? And then you can
Right, okay. BDS stands for Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions Movement. So I hope our audiences got that. So I'm just going to repeat it again: Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions Movement. So so I'm just gonna give a rundown again. What the BDS movement does is that it calls upon people of goodwill to boycott and divest from Israeli products, so that they can be able to cut off financing of the Zionist movement, of the Zionist government of Israel. So take your money elsewhere. Don't give your money to the Israeli government if you can help it. I know that many companies work with the Israeli government, and I know that many products linked to Israel have managed to penetrate markets across the world. But if you can avoid it, please be very conscious about it and avoid giving the Israeli government money. So yeah, like I say, there's so much linked to the Israeli government, and you can visit the bdsmovement.net website to find out which products you can avoid. But right here in Kenya, you can start by avoiding Baraka Israel products. Next time you visit the supermarket, look out for Baraka Israel products and make a point of not supporting that business. You can avoid participating in the Israeli Film Festival. You can also, avoid wearing Puma sports shoes that are the company Puma is very ardent in supporting the Israeli government. I mean, you could try other brands. So I'm not going to hold any brief for any company here, because we are not here to advertise companies. But like, I'm going to be very specific of the companies you can boycott and divest from. For example, Airbnb. Airbnb, supports the setting up of Israeli-linked accommodation property in occupied Palestine and displacing people so that they can build fancy apartments on behalf of the Zionists. So you could try and avoid Airbnb if you can. So yeah, like I said, just visit bdsmovement.net to find out which products to avoid. And right here in Kenya, join the BDS movement through Kenyans for Palestine as you continue with political education and advice on what products you can avoid if you can, because like I mentioned earlier, many of these products have penetrated the market, and it becomes really difficult, to just ask people to do a wholesale boycott of products. But Kenyans for Palestine is trying to, educate people on what they can help avoiding. I mean, you don't necessarily have to use oil from Baraka Israel, olive oil from the Baraka Israel company. There's so many alternatives there. And we would love to educate you more on these alternatives. So please follow Kenyans for Palestine on Twitter and, send us a DM or an email, and we will be able to, help you with political education and teach you more about the BDS movement and how you too can boycott and divest from Israeli products that fund Zionism. Yes.
All right. Maureen, you can mute yourself, please. I have a few responses from my sister, my dada, Emma Nyerere. I met her last week when we were at a PAPSEN Pan-African Solidarity Network, Pan-African Palestine Solidarity Network in Senegal. And so I'd sent the questions that we're discussing here to her, to everyone in the panel, and I will read out all her responses. So on the definition of apartheid, the term apartheid may be defined as an Afrikaans word that means apart and refers to the racial separation policy that was legally adopted and practiced by the government of South Africa that was established under the leadership of the National Party, led by Daniel F. Malan in 1948. This government passed two pieces of legislation, the Population Registration Act of 1950 and Group Areas Act of 1950, that institutionalized the idea that South Africa was constituted by so-called racial groups that had to be facilitated to develop separately. Two further legislations were passed by the National Party in 1954 and 1955 that came to be known as the Lands Act, consolidated the legal separation of what then became three so-called racial groups: Bantu, colored, and white. The philosophy behind this racial segregation policy was similar to what we witness now in occupied Palestine. So what happened in South Africa is what we are seeing in Palestine. Some indigenous residents are designated as citizens, while others as migrants who are not citizens and therefore enjoy no citizen rights in the relevant polity. In the case of what was then the Apartheid Republic of South Africa, whites were citizens enjoying citizen rights, while those classified Bantu had no citizen rights in the Apartheid Republic of South Africa polity. The Bantu were supposed to enjoy citizenship rights in designated areas called Bantustans, patches of land carved out on a tribal basis from what was previously available for settlement by all, such as Transkei, KwaZulu-Natal, etc. In the case of Palestine, as from the 1947 UN partition, these patches of land were so-called Palestinian homeland, areas such as the Gaza Strip and the West Bank of the Jordan River that were designated as the areas where these Palestine Bantu, quote unquote, i.e. the Palestinians of Arab ancestry, were granted citizenship rights. More than 60% of the Palestinian Bantus live in the Palestine diaspora in Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, and Egypt mainly. The idea that one day there will be a separate Palestinian state that will exist side by side with the apartheid Israeli state is a pipe dream fostered on the Palestinian people by the military-industrial complex that keeps the settler colonialist state of Israel in existence. As in the case of the Pan-African Liberation Movement, the Palestinian cause for self-determination will triumph because the Palestinian youth in the diaspora will one day achieve the Palestinian cause of freedom in unity across tribal lines. Palestinians, irrespective of whether they are Jew or Arab, irrespective of whether they happen to be Judaic or Christian or Islamic, will one day live in one united country called Palestine that will be multiracial and multicultural. The link between the struggle for Pan-African struggle for self-determination and the Palestinian struggle for self-determination long live the struggle for self-determination by the Palestinian peoples, irrespective of whether they are Jew or Arab, irrespective of whether they happen to be Judaic or Christian or Islamic. My sister, Emma Nyerere, we appreciate you for these words. Thank you for typing it. I know you will listen to this. You're also listening in the background as you're trying to navigate this, the occasion that you're attending today, which is a memorial for the late President John Pombe Magufuli, and doing everything that you're still serving the continent. So we appreciate you for that. But these conversations will be, what you've typed out, we'll share it on the Msingi page. So thank you for doing that. Maureen, it seems that it is you and I who are here for this conversation, but I think it's going well. What do you feel is the role of Pan-Africanism in the struggle for Palestine? How are these struggles connected? We've read about Emma Nyerere's views. What are your views? What is the link?
What is the role, what is the importance of Pan-Africanism and its link to the struggle in Palestine and the Palestinian cause? So, when what was happening in South Africa during apartheid is that many African countries, not all, but many African countries came together to condemn the atrocities that were happening in South Africa, and not just through lip service, but also through material support by, offering to train the liberator fighters, boycotting products from occupied Azania, what we now know as South Africa, right? And just, this sense of community, this sense of unity with Africans facing colonization, with Africans facing discrimination from the Rhodesian government, from the apartheid government that had occupied Azania at the time. So it behooves us as Africans of goodwill across the continent that Pan-Africanism brings us together against a common enemy. Like I had mentioned earlier, what Israel is doing with Pegasus in Africa, and what they are doing in training agents of the state that harm ordinary Africans. It's up to us as Africans to unite and remember that not too long ago, what is happening in occupied Palestine is what was happening in occupied Azania. And because the Zionist government is linked to an imperialist is linked to the US and another imperialist government, we can't be guaranteed that what they are doing in Palestine is going to just stop at Palestine. So us as Africans should unite and support the Palestinian cause, because it is very similar to what happened in occupied Azania. And even if you don't care for the people of Palestine, which you should care for the people of Palestine. But even if you don't care for the people of Palestine, please do remember that the Zionist government, that the Israeli government is supporting espionage activities of some rogue African governments on the continent, that the Israeli government is training state officers like police and the military, to rain terror on ordinary Africans on the continent. So that is enough to bring us together as Pan-Africans to say no to what Israel is doing in Palestine, and also because, they were just late last year, they were offered observer status in the African Union. I mean, why would we want a Zionist state having observer status in the African Union? We want self-determination for ourselves, so we do not want a Zionist government interfering with the internal issues of Africa. So yeah, I call upon all Africans of goodwill to join the Pan-Africanist movement in resisting their activities on the continent through Pegasus and other ways, through what they call trade, and also just to stand with the people of Palestine against apartheid, just like we did for occupied Azania, now known as South Africa. So that is the important role of Pan-Africanism in resisting the Zionist occupation in Palestine, and also resisting their espionage and spying on our continent, and training violent forces. So Pan-Africanist unity is very important.
All right, thank you, Maureen. You've been able to carry all of us. You've done so well. I don't know, I've not seen any questions or comments. If let me just check on the live. There's nothing that I have seen that's come as a question or a comment. I see Curtis again saying to hear a theological critique of Zionism. So maybe what we can do is I will arrange with Kolade to do a podcast conversation where this will be, because there seems to have been a problem, an interruption with his connection, but this is a very important conversation. So I will look out for him and have this conversation recorded, and I will put it out on our Facebook page. You can check for the links or go to the Msingi Talks podcast and look for it. This coming week, there's a lot of activities for the Israeli Apartheid Week. Are you able to tell us what's going on?
Yes, the Israeli Apartheid Week.
How people can join, and how people can join in.
Right. The Israeli Apartheid Week begins here in Africa, begins on March 21st, all through to April 4th. So the purpose of the Israeli Apartheid Week is just to, build support build grassroots support for Palestine in various parts across the world. So, with all that's going on in the world, we know the crisis in Ukraine, and just a lot of things are happening, and people tend to forget that the people of Palestine are experiencing real-time aggression from the Zionist government. So the purpose of the Israeli Apartheid Week is to keep reminding people that this is not, something that takes a break. Zionist aggression against the people of Palestine is not something that takes a break. It's happening in real time, and it's only getting worse. So perhaps if you might have heard about the Zionist occupation or the crisis in Palestine many years ago in school, or just as a soundbite while you are watching the news. No, it's happening in real time, and it's just getting worse. So the purpose of this week is to have talks and films and just create conversation and bring awareness to the grassroots communities of what is happening in Israel right now, or occupied Palestine right now. So the Kenyans for Palestine movement has organized various activities for Israel Apartheid Week, beginning on March 21st. You can join us at Unseen Nairobi in Hurlingham this Sunday to watch a film about the crisis in occupied Palestine. You can support materially the various activities that are going to take place in different venues across Nairobi, in Mathare, at the Cheche Bookshop. So just follow us on Twitter, Kenyans for Palestine. We have a whole list of activities that have been lined up from March 21st all through to April 4th. And just keep up with us on social media to find out where we'll be next. And if you need resources on the BDS movement, boycott, divest and sanctions movement, if you need resources on understanding what is going on in Israel through summarized format, we have zines for that, we have pamphlets for that, we have films for that. And so these activities are going to be primarily in Mombasa and Nairobi. But if you're from anywhere in Kenya, we are on Facebook, we are on Twitter. Just keep up with us, and you could also just arrange a small activity in your community, in your neighborhood, wherever you are in Kenya. It doesn't have to be anything big, just a discussion with 2 or 3 people, with 2 or 3 of your friends on what is happening in Israel, just to bring awareness to your community and to the grassroots. So from 21st to 4th of April, Kenyans for Palestine has many activities lined up, and I am sure that Msingi Talks also has a little something to say about the Israeli Apartheid Week. So anyone watching this live, keep it right here on Msingi Talks, and Carol is going to be briefing you on activities that are going to be happening during Israel Apartheid Week. So join us, boycott, divest, watch films, support us materially, just join the movement and support the cause in Palestine.
Thank you so much, Maureen. We appreciate you. Thank you for all the work that you're doing, all the work that you have done with to see that Palestine is free in our lifetime. I do not see if any comments or questions that I could read from the panel. Let me see. We had people in the beginning saying where they're listening to us from. We had someone from Zahid was listening to us from the coast. Let me see all comments. I'm not able to see them. But to all that have watched now, thank you. To all who will rewatch later, thank you. Please follow our page, Msingi Trust, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Follow Kenyans for Palestine. I'm not sure Emma is on any social medias, and you can follow Kairos Nigeria as well. I will share a picture, an infographic with information around the Israel Apartheid Week that's going to be celebrated or commemorated in the coming few weeks. But I would, despite and in spite of all challenges, and I think this is normally expected when you're having conversations that are of this status, in spite of the challenges we have received. This is an important conversation. Read, educate yourself, follow alternative voices, not just the ones that you listen to in your churches, on social media. Listen to the voices of the people who are suffering every single day. I think for me, Maureen, maybe as I'm winding this up, when watching the film These Stones Cry Out was really, really, really impactful. And to see the story of the Christians, the people who who share the image of Jesus, who are maybe Jesus' distant relatives, not able to practice their faith. And I think it is very intentional that many of us do not know that. So I thank Kenya for Palestine for that opportunity that you gave me to watch that. Yeah. So asante to Triza for doing our social media. Asante to Kolade, who's had technical difficulties. Asante to Emma, who's listening in the background, but also who's attending to important Pan-African matters. Thank you for solidarity. Long live the freedom of Palestine. Long live.
Yes, long live the freedom of Palestine, and thanks everyone for tuning in, and of course Caroline and Triza and the team at Msingi Trust for putting this together. This has been a great discussion, and I hope people have learned a thing or two, and hope to see you at the various activities during Israel Apartheid Week.
All right, thank you. I will go off on live, but please, Emma, do not